Hi, this is Louise, and welcome to this week's short. This week's short is inspired by an interview that I was watching where Clover Hogan, who is a climate activist, a young climate activist, she's 23 years old, and she's been dedicating her life to empower young people to take action on climate. And she's been a key voice in boards of large organizations, at massive conferences, to actually speak up in terms of the next generation and have their voices heard around creating a better future. Now, why am I bringing her into this short? Because I was watching her being interviewed on television around Stop Oil's actions in terms of art, where they've been throwing soup ultimately at gorgeous art. And she was being challenged around, whether that was the right thing to do. Now, this short is not about whether this is the right thing to do or not. I think we all have our own views on that. But what I found was fascinating in her answer is that what she said was, well, at the end of the day, what's relevant here is that we all know now there's a problem. But are we actually doing something? And she turned to the interviewer and said, you know about this. What are you actually doing about it? And it was a really challenging question. There was definitely a pause. And I'm bringing this up not because I want to be unhelpful, but I think there comes a point where we all need to stop, to pause, and catch up with the fact that we now know there's a problem. It seems that in the last 3 years, there's been such an acceleration as to the awareness that it's happening now. I remember when I started on this journey 13 years ago, and I always thought I was fighting for generations that were to come, but that I would not personally experience climate change or its direct effects in my lifetime. That has changed. It's changed for me in July 2017, where one of my favorite places on the planet burnt, and where the homes of my family nearly also burnt. Luckily, they were able to be saved. But we were evacuated in the middle of the night, and we had to drive through the flames. And since then, we all have our stories, whether it's the extremely hot summer or the flooding or whatever else is now currently impacting our reality. And so it's time to own up that what we thought was actually going to happen in the future, and ultimately was our children's future or our grandchildren's future, which was kind of convenient to forget, right? Is actually our own future. Not just our own future, but our own present. And so what that means is we are all now called to ask ourselves this question. What are we actually doing about it? And I know that when we are confronted with that question, we can end up feeling quite powerless because it seems such a big thing, so overwhelming. And there's an element of thinking, well, what can little me actually do about it? During this summer, I attended a workshop where they were explaining exactly how climate change worked. It was a great experience in terms of the format. It was a horrifying experience in terms of really understanding what we were being confronted with. But I believe that you can only solve a problem once you actually are willing to fully face it. And what I found was really interesting was at the end of that workshop, we were all asked what we were going to do about it. And what I found fascinating is I knew that in this workshop, there were many people who were in high up positions in large corporations, large organizations, or even small family businesses, basically all shapes and all sizes. But you know what most people's response was? I'm going to take the car less and take the bike more. Now, that definitely has an impact on the climate. But what I didn't hear people say was, I'm going to work out how I can work on this in my job. I'm going to bring it to my company. I'm going to have a new level of conversation. I'm going to start brainstorming what that means in terms of our business and how we need to show up for it. And so, yes, calculate your carbon footprint personally. But a lot of you, through your work, have the potential for massive impact. And so start thinking, how can you start having an impact through your work? I know it may seem that you have to kind of go, just give everything up and go and work for an NGO somewhere, but that is not the case, not anymore. What we need are people embedded in business who are coming up with new ideas, who are reinventing the very foundations of how we do business, who are questioning everything and up-leveling it, evolving it beyond what we can only imagine. And what that means is that each one of us can start evolving our roles. We can start having a new level of conversations inside our organizations to evolve our roles, to create new jobs, the jobs that don't exist yet, but the jobs that we need to create and build the future we actually want to see. The future that we want to live and that we want our children and grandchildren to live. So, my question to you now is, what will you be doing about this?